May 29, 1453. A city that had stood for 1,123 years was about to vanish, but not from plague, not from starvation. Instead, it would fall to a weapon the world had never seen before, and a strategy so insane that no one believed it could actually work. Constantinople, the wealthiest city in the world at the time, sitting between Europe and Asia like a brilliant jewel between two oceans. However, by 1453, the Byzantine Empire had become a mere shadow of its former self. 1,000 years earlier, they had ruled from Spain to Syria. But now, only the city of Constantinople and a few surrounding villages remained. Emperor Constantine XI gazed out from the walls. He knew what was coming. On the horizon, the green banners of the Ottomans blanketed the landscape like a rising tide, and at the center of that army, a 21-year-old man rode forward on horseback. Mehmed II. They called him Fatih, the conqueror. But his greatest dream wasn't land or gold. He wanted something that 7 centuries of Ottoman sultans before him had failed to achieve. He wanted Constantinople. But how do you break a city like this? Constantinople's walls stood 4 meters thick, 12 meters high, with 3 layers of defenses stacked like waves of stone. For 1,000 years, these walls had withstood Arabs, Avars, Bulgars, and even the Crusaders. Every mighty army had failed. And then Mehmed met a man named Orban. Orban was a Hungarian engineer who specialized in cannon making. At first, he approached Constantine XI, offering to build weapons for the Byzantines. When Constantine refused because he couldn't afford to pay, Orban turned to the Ottomans, changing the course of the siege. "I can do the impossible," Orban told Mehmed. "I can build a cannon powerful enough to shatter any wall in the world." Mehmed asked, "Even the walls of Constantinople?" Orban replied, "That's right, even the walls of Constantinople." Over 3 months, Orban cast a bronze monster. The cannon measured 8 meters long, weighed 19 tons, and fired stone balls weighing 600 kilograms. To haul it from Edirne to Constantinople required 60 oxen and 200 men. Each time it fired, the sound echoed 20 kilometers away, and the ground shook as if struck by an earthquake. On April 6, 1453, the Ottoman siege began. 80,000 troops surrounded the city from the landside. A fleet of 120 ships blocked all supply routes from the sea, and in the middle, Orban's supercannon was positioned directly opposite the gate of St. Romanus, where the walls were thickest. Constantine XI stood on the watchtower, counting the enemy forces. How many men did he have? 7,000. That's right, just 7,000 warriors to defend 19 kilometers of walls. Among them, 3,000 were mercenaries from Genoa and Venice, led by Giovanni Giustiniani, one of the most skilled commanders in Europe at the time. He knew they couldn't win, but he would fight anyway. On April 12th, Orban gave the order to load. Men poured 60 kilograms of gunpowder into the barrel, placed the massive stone ball inside, and lit the fuse. The explosion shook the entire city. Black smoke obscured everything, and when the smoke cleared, everyone witnessed the impossible. A massive hole had appeared in the wall, and the stone had shattered into powder. With one shot, what Constantinople had taken pride in for 1,000 years had been torn open. But the Byzantines didn't surrender. Every night they repaired the walls with stone, wood, and even mud mixed with straw. During the day, Ottoman cannons fired, and every night the Byzantines rebuilt. In this way, the war became not just a battle of weapons, but also of willpower. Meanwhile, Mehmed faced a major problem. The Golden Horn Inlet on Constantinople's northern side was protected by a massive chain stretched across the entire entrance. This chain prevented the Ottoman fleet from entering, meaning they could only attack from one direction. If they couldn't break through the chain, the siege would drag on indefinitely. But how do you break through a chain when Genoese warships stand guard? Mehmed came up with a plan that no one thought was feasible. One night in April, the people of Constantinople woke to witness the unimaginable. 70 Ottoman ships were gliding across dry land, climbing over the Galata hills, and descending into the Golden Horn on the other side of the chain. They had greased an 8-kilometer path with oil, using oxen and men to drag each ship over the hills. In a single night, The Ottoman fleet appeared right inside the Byzantine defensive perimeter like a magic trick. Constantine XI watched from the walls, sweat streaming down his forehead. Now they had to fight on two fronts. His meager forces had to spread out to defend even more kilometers of walls. Giustiniani, the Genoese commander, placed his hand on Constantine's shoulder. "We'll hold, Your Majesty. I'll defend the gate of St. Romanus at all costs." And he kept his word. For 53 days, the Ottomans attacked relentlessly. They used ladders, siege towers, and even dug tunnels to penetrate the city. But each time, the Byzantines pushed them back. They poured boiling oil from the walls, fired Greek fire that burned flesh, and fought for every meter of wall. But they couldn't hold out forever. On May 28th, Mehmed summoned his generals. "Tomorrow we launch the final assault," he declared. "There's no turning back, either victory or death." He ordered the Bashi bazouks, irregular troops, to attack first to exhaust the enemy. Then came the Anatolians, the regular warriors. And finally, when the enemy was exhausted, the Janissaries, the elite force, would attack to finish them off. Constantine XI knew this was the final night. He summoned everyone in the city to Hagia Sophia. In the flickering candlelight, thousands knelt in prayer. He told them, "Remember that we're defending not just city, but an entire civilization." At dawn on May 29th, war drums thundered. The Bashi bazouks charged like a tidal wave, screaming wildly. They had no good armor, no fine weapons, but they had numbers. The walls disappeared beneath a sea of bodies. Giustiniani and the Genoese knights fought like wounded beasts. They slashed, stabbed, and pushed back wave after wave of enemies. For 3 hours, blood ran like rivers at the foot of the walls. But the Bashi bazouks kept attacking until they were spent. And then the Anatolians arrived. They were stronger, better organized, and carried longer ladders. This time, some climbed onto the walls. The fighting turned into hand-to-hand combat, swords clanging against armor with ear-splitting shrieks. Constantine XI drew his sword and fought alongside his soldiers. He wasn't an emperor sitting in a palace. He was a warrior on the front lines. But then, a cannonball struck near Giustiniani. Stone fragments hit him, blood soaking his armor. He collapsed, gasping for breath. His men carried him off the battlefield for treatment. When the soldiers saw Giustiniani leave the battlefield, morale collapsed. They thought he had fled. And in that moment of hesitation, the Janissaries attacked. The Janissaries were warriors trained from childhood, fighting like machines without fear. They carried axes, curved swords, and thick armor. When they charged the walls, the Byzantines had no strength left to resist. And then, someone discovered that the Kirkaporta gate, a small gate on the side of the walls, had been left open. No one knows why. Perhaps someone forgot to lock it after going out on patrol. Perhaps it was betrayal. But whatever the reason, the Janissaries found their way in. They flooded in like a torrent. Constantine XI saw Ottoman banners flying on a nearby tower. He knew the time had come. He stripped off his imperial robes, grabbed his sword, and charged into the enemy forces. No one knows exactly how he died. Some say he fought to his last breath. Some say he was buried under piles of bodies. But one thing is certain. He died as a warrior, not as a man who surrendered. When the sun rose, Ottoman banners flew atop Hagia Sophia. Constantinople, the city that had stood for 1,000 years, had fallen. Mehmed II rode into the city. He passed through deserted streets, seeing corpses scattered everywhere. He reached Hagia Sophia, entered, and stood in silence. Then he ordered the church converted into a mosque. Constantinople was no more. The city now had a new name, Istanbul. But why does this battle matter so much? Because it wasn't just the end of a city or an empire. It was the end of an entire era. The Byzantine Empire was the last bridge between the ancient world and the modern world. When it fell, the knowledge of ancient Greece and Rome flooded into Europe. Byzantine scholars fled to Italy, bringing books and learning with them. They helped Europe begin the Renaissance. Moreover, the Silk Road through Constantinople was cut off. Europe was forced to find new sea routes to Asia. That's why Columbus set sail, why Vasco da Gama rounded the Cape of Good Hope. The age of exploration began here. And weapons? Orban's super cannon proved that walls, no matter how strong, were no longer impregnable. The age of castles and knights ended. The age of gunpowder and artillery began. One battle, 53 days. But it changed the entire course of history. Constantinople fell, but its legacy lives on. Every time you look at a Renaissance masterpiece, every time you read about the great explorers, remember that it all began with a city lost on May 29th, 1453. That was the day the Middle Ages ended, and the modern world began. If you enjoyed historical videos like this, hit that like button to support us, and don't forget to subscribe to get our latest videos. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.